Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast.
Today, we're asking some very important questions. What if beauty was as important as function? What if design wasn't only about solving problems, but about creating meaningful and lasting joy? Our guest today has spent his career exploring exactly that. Stefan Sagmeister is a designer, storyteller, and provocateur whose work has spanned music, art, branding, and film. From collaborating with the Rolling Stones and OK Go to co-leading Sagmeister and Walsh, he's pushed boundaries in ways that continue to ripple through creative industries worldwide. He's also one of the most frequently invited speakers in official TED's history, taking the TED Talk stage 5 times to share his insights on happiness, beauty, and creativity with millions around the globe. With 2 Grammys, countless international awards, and exhibitions in the world's most respected museums, Stefan has shown us that design is not just visual communication, it's a way of experiencing life itself. Today, alongside our host, Heather Crank, we'll talk about Stefan's philosophy of sabbaticals, the stories behind projects like Beautiful Numbers in Ukraine, and what it means to stay curious and human in an industry that often prizes speed over depth.
Welcome, Stefan. It is such an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I just want to clarify, Stefan is not wearing a bathrobe. It's a beautiful shirt. Oh,
It's a bathrobe look when you're deep enough in the camera viewpointer. Yes.
Yes, it's a beautiful shirt. Okay, so right now you're on a sabbatical, and you take these sabbaticals every 7 years. Why 7 years? I'm so curious.
That's basically how it came about initially. After 6 years of the studio, I felt that the work was becoming repetitive, and I really felt that I should do something about it. And it took me a year to overcome my angst and anxiety to actually do this. Oh. So it just happened, the first sabbatical just happened to be after 7 years. And then, of course, I did look into it, and obviously the name sabbatical comes from the number 7. It's from the every 7 years you should rest. So I'm not a big believer in these kind of numbers, but it's very odd that there was one time when I thought, for some outer reasons, it would have made more sense for me to do it after 6. And I said, well, then I'll do it after 6, but it felt too early. And then that reason fell away, and I did it after 7 again. And so it's also strange to me that at no time, this is my 4th sabbatical, I felt after the year, it would be great to elongate it. I wish it would be another 6 months. I always felt, and I'm at the very end of this sabbatical, it's only going to be another 4 weeks, really. I've always felt that the year was just about the right time. I at one time also tried to, why don't I do 4 months every year or 3 months every year instead of a full year every 7 years? And that felt too much like a holiday span. I didn't really go on holiday. I used it as a working sabbatical, but it felt the full year just works brilliantly for me. And every time I've done one, it feels like when at the start, the year is so long that I'm cannot really oversee the end. And it's just fantastic to have this crazy amount of time in front of me that I can fill really however. Meaning, from if I would like doing that, I would also allow myself to sit on the beach for a while. But I already know right now that I don't get pleasure out of it. So in all of these sabbaticals, really have been working sabbaticals, meaning like I try to explore things that I don't have time or the power or the strength to pursue when the studio is busy.
Right.
This one has been that way too, even though this probably has been the most close to my usual working time. Because of the previous 3 sabbatical, my usual working time had transformed into a sabbatic-like time. Because I did 3 sabbaticals, I really wanted to make some changes in the studio, meaning like we are not, in the last 6 years, we have not accepted any commercial work, not because I hate commercial work, but because I felt I'd done enough of it. In a very similar way, after the first sabbatical, I decided not to pursue more album covers for the same reason. I felt that I've done album covers. The number 46 wasn't as much fun as the number 1. And of course, I was very aware that there was a lot of other things that are interesting to pursue out there.
Makes perfect sense. I recently read your book, Now is Better, and I'm very curious about the theory that you're pursuing right now. I'd love to read a quote really quick from your book, and then I've got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So you state, quote, "Good design has to help someone. Good design has to delight someone. As designers, we must try to elevate beauty on the same level as function. We can't just be problem solvers. Many of our problems are so easy to solve that pure problem solving becomes simply lazy. We need to solve design issues with delight. We need to be able to create joy." So my question to you is, why are beauty, joy, and delight so important? And is one more important than the other?
Well, I would say that why is being alive important? Why not? I mean, that's almost on the same level. Because I think all of us want to be delighted. All of us would rather be in a joyful state than in misery. And all of us would rather be in a beautiful surrounding than in an ugly surrounding. We have proof on that. I mean, I think this is all pretty logical anyway, but there is also very number-based proof, meaning we know which cities people find the most beautiful because they have the largest visitor numbers. And Paris is always number 1, and Cincinnati isn't. It's very, very, very clear that most people around the world find Paris more beautiful than Cincinnati, which is the reason that they on holiday choose to go there as opposed to there. And when we have free choice on which places to go to, almost all of us choose pretty places to go to. We don't, which is why we don't find a lot of hotels in the outskirts of our city, where there is discount furniture stores and gas stations and fast food restaurants. We might go there when we have to buy cheap furniture, but we don't really want to spend our holidays there. These are very purely functional places. And I think that all of us want beauty or joy with their function. And it's surprising to me that these kind of insights were already very much stated by the original modernists. Let's say nobody asked that question in the 19th century because the 19th century was obsessed with beauty. The point where it kind of became boring and sort of like swallowed over into kitsch. Like, a lot of, you look at many 19th century paintings, there is some gorgeous ones, but there is also a lot of sunsets over prairies and, like there's a lot of things that we now would kind of almost see as overbearing beauty that really swaps over into kitsch. But in the 20th century, this stopped pretty much on purpose by the modernists, who said in the very beginning of the century, specifically after World War II, that was so incredibly brutal. Beauty might not by itself be a value to pursue, because the nations that were involved in World War I were all the developed sort of first world nations, and clearly their value of beauty didn't save us from this incredible slaughter that was World War I. So there were a number of artists, Duchamp for sure, but a good number of others, who sort of actively sought to get beauty out of art. And I would say that the original modernists in design and architecture actually took form and beauty still very seriously. If you look at a Mies van der Rohe building, it is actually quite beautiful if you look at, let's say, the Seagram building in New York or many of his others, because form played a big role. And then if you looked at the people who studied at the Bauhaus, even the very functional ones, let's say like Max Bill, who later on started the school in Ulm, which was known for being the most anal when it came to form and when it came to being super functional. But Max Bill, in a talk in the 50s in Switzerland, basically said exactly that. We will need to lift beauty up on the exact same level as function, because for one thing, beauty is a function in itself, and we won't be able to create good work without it. Look, meaning a very simple example. If I have this water glass here, which is, I would say, a medium, it's a very well functioning water glass. I can drink water out of it very well. And from a beauty perspective, I think it's not bad and it's not fantastic. I would say I would give it somewhere in the middle. Maybe I would give it a 7. Now, this water glass could function just as well as it does now, but it could be even more beautiful, which would mean that I would take even better care for it, and it would likely live even longer. If you look at a glass collection in a museum, the ones that survived are the beautiful ones. The ugly ones, people that didn't care about. So the longevity of a glass, which is clearly a function, is completely determined by its beauty. And that's true in architecture. If you look at the Pantheon in Rome, the only building in the world that has been in constant use for 2,000 years, that's very much connected to its beauty. If the Pantheon would have been an ugly building, one of the many cultures that occupied Rome in the past 2,000 years would have turned that thing, would have ripped that thing down and replaced it with something else, because it's in the center of Rome. It has a fantastic space that other people also wanted to occupy. But I think every culture respected that. And there's many, many examples of that, of beauty bringing functionality into design. So, of course, we should pursue it.
What's beautiful. No pun intended. Speaking of beauty, I'd like to talk about the incredible artist Louise Bourgeois. You had the amazing honor of attending one of her salons, and you showed her your book, Make You Look, and she was going to critique it, and then she looked at you and asked you if you wanted to be an artist, and you said, no, I'm very happy being a designer. So my question is, Why Louise Bourgeois if you're happy being a designer?
Well, I had heard that she is allowing 10 artists to come to her building in Chelsea every Sunday. And you can apply and you have to bring the portfolio. And I loved her work. So I thought, well, I'll write. That sounds great. What a fantastic thing to do on a Sunday. And I immediately got in. Was one of those 10 people. She was super tough. There were definitely some people out of those 10, which I suspected wouldn't be an artist anymore after this meeting. So she was really harsh, but at the same time, of course, unbelievably generous, because, there was no advantage for her in this. And it was unbelievably influential on me because I was so impressed that I immediately copied her and allowed 10 designers to come on Monday evenings. And when that became impractical because my travel schedule was so crazy, that, of course, inspired my Instagram account, which, I'm still doing to this very day, where I review young designers' work on Instagram. That actually, I've been doing this now for years, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue, because this used to be a very lovely account where, because my tone was, I hope, helpful, all the comments on that on my feed were also in that same vein. And I would say that in the last year or two, that's changed, where the comments became nasty. And nasty towards the person that I'm reviewing. If that person is from the wrong country, let's say Russia or Israel, there is vitriol against that person.
Oh, wow.
And things became so politicized, but in a very stupid, very surfacey sort of way. People some people comment nastily without even reading the caption. Wow. So they don't know what it's about. And who cares? I don't need nastiness in my life. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
So I'll see if this continues in that way. I'll do something else with the account. Maybe, I don't know. I don't care. It's also possible that I just stop being on Instagram. If that's so, we were on Twitter early on. Got a pretty big account. And then Twitter became so nasty, still called Twitter then, that we just stopped. I don't have to be on this stuff. If it's pleasant, great. If it isn't, well, then let's do something else with my time.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so speaking of politicized things, you took a show of your data paintings in 2023 called Now is Better. It was a gorgeous show. It started off in the Patrick Parrish Gallery in New York, and then you followed this exhibition into central Tokyo. Your aim was to bring this message of optimism despite everything that's going on right now, and you focus on long-term positive outcomes using design and data. So my question is, how did you come up with this concept, and not just the concept, but the unusual execution as well?
Well, that's easy to tell. Literally the first impetus to do something in that direction came when I was a resident at the American Academy in Rome. And they have this very fantastic food program. So the food is delicious, meaning all 70 residents, designers, artists, filmmakers, writers show up for dinner. And the way they organize dinner is that you always sit next to somebody else. And these are, it's 70 smart people. They all work on something related to Rome. So there's always something to talk about. So this is a very salon-like atmosphere. And one night, the the husband of one of the invited artists, who was a lawyer working at the European Court, told me that what we are seeing right now in Poland, Hungary, and Brazil at the time really means the end of modern democracy. And when I didn't comment much during dinner, but I looked it up in the studio right afterwards, meaning modern democracy, when did it start? What's the story? And it turned out that 200 years ago, there was a single democratic country in the world, United States. 100 years ago, there were 16. And now we have 86 democratic countries. It's the first time in human history that more than half of the world population lives within a democratic system. This is not an opinion, this is fact, meaning this is United Nations say right now there's 86 democratic countries. And so that means that this smart lawyer who read 5 newspapers in 3 languages every day had no idea about the state of the world. Zero. He had a completely, utterly wrong idea about not only the state of the world, but particularly about the state of democracy. He thought it's the end of modern democracy when we were very, very close, 8 years away only from the absolute peak. The world has never, 8 years prior, had never, ever been more democratic, ever. And so his impression that it became a tiny little bit less democratic, and that would mean the end of modern democracy, was completely, demonstrably wrong. Because so many of my friends have very similar impressions. I thought, wow, this is a really juicy direction to pursue for a communication designer like myself. And when I looked into it, I discovered that this is true for almost every direction of human development. I give you a little example. A couple of months ago, this helicopter went into a airliner in Washington. And I think it created, I didn't count them exactly, 4 or 5 or 6 front page articles in the New York Times, going in all sorts of directions of how terrible the security right now is in the aviation industry, how this government cut and that government cut impacted it badly, and so on. And your impression would be that it's kind of dangerous to fly right now. Even though I am convinced that the journalists at the New York Times would know these facts, before that incident, the US airlines flew for 2 light years without a fatal incident. So you have to take the measurement system of space travel to describe how incredible distances that US airlines flew without a fatal accident. But none of this ever made the front page of the New York Times. And the reason for that is because we all, including me, love terrible news. We just do. It's just much more interesting to us. Positive news are super boring. And so my challenge as a communication designer is to make these positive news not super boring. But that's a challenge. It's very, very difficult. And the reason we are doing this on historic paintings, cut them out and insert no new things that look like minimal art, but really are data visualizations, is of course because I looked when visualizing long-term facts, it made sense to do them in a medium that already has proven its longevity, namely paintings from the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. Or we are right now in Guadalajara doing sculptures from the 18th and 19th century.
Oh, wow.
basically cut up
Oh my God.
and add things to it. Well, there's one I actually found. We're doing one right now where I found is a sculpture, 18th century sculpture here in Mexico of Jesus that had no arms and legs. So there we could just basically sculpt new arms and legs, almost like prostheses. But
Oh my
it was arms and legs, and we cast them in bronze. And actually, I'm just coming back from the foundry.
Oh,
We'll have them powder coated afterwards, so you see the difference between his original 18th century body and the newly cast legs. But then, of course, these are also data visualizations.
wow. Oh, that's such a brilliant idea.
No, so I think it works. We've been exhibiting them pretty much around the world. I mean, from Tokyo, Seoul, China, to many European places. It works meaning like I am not independently wealthy, so I also need I want to sell them for one reason, because ultimately I want that sculpture to be in somebody's living room as a reminder that what they just saw on X does not mean the end of the world. Also, I need these things because I buy original art, cut it up and ship it, and then we produce the inserts with a lot of difficulty. So it's not a cheap process, and so that money somehow also come back in so that this whole thing is a sustainable project and doesn't just end when I run out of money to do it. But that also turned out to be true, meaning because these things are pretty, we sell them quite well. So we're doing a mixture of museum shows or institutional shows. There's one opening up here in Mexico on the 25th. And we're doing also shows in commercial galleries. There's one opening up in Madrid in a commercial gallery on September 11th. So it's a mixture. And I find we've done fantastically a show like this also in Ukraine. It was so successful that it even traveled in Ukraine. It started and also went to Kiev. I would say I got the most positive feedback ever in Ukraine.
Wow.
Yeah, super apprehensive, actually, the whole thing out, because I said on a German podcast, the interviewer asked me, would you bring a message like this positive message to Ukraine? And I said, no, I wouldn't, because I don't think that people who have bombs falling on their head are very much interested in the fact that fewer people die in wars statistically now than they used to. That's not something that you can hear. And a woman from Ukraine contacted me and said, no, I think you're wrong. We would love this message. And originally we did a Zoom call with an audience. So I was projected on a wall and there was like 80 people in that room. And that room was super excited about this message. Like somebody said, oh, why don't we get your book translated in Ukrainian? And I thought that's never going to happen. But it did. And the first printing sold out immediately.
Wow.
I think they're either on the second or third printing. Then they said, let's bring the exhibition here. And I also thought it will work.
Yeah.
When I inquired why that would be, my new friend Andre, who is a designer in Kiev, thought that if you have actual problems in your life, you are much more thankful for something beautiful, for something positive. And that might be that you don't have to go into the bunker and you can sleep through the night.
Yeah.
Or it might be a positive design exhibition. And I have to say, that I got the most pushback on this message from people who do the best.
Like, explain that.
Meaning that people who are wealthy and are doing really well and are in a great situation in their life think that this positive message is kind of surfacey, that I don't quite understand the real troubles of the world. They think that that it's sort of Pollyanna-ish, that it's even sort of commercial in some ways. And I found the people in Ukraine, there was not one person who I talked to, not one. But I mean, I did a talk in front of 3,000 people in Kiev, and we had a book signing afterwards. And at the book signing, you can talk more one-to-one, not long because there was a gigantic line, but at least some words. And I can tell you the sentence, "Thank you so much for bringing this message to Ukraine." I've heard it hundreds of times, hundreds.
Wow.
So it's interesting. It's I think one of the main reasons for me to do it, and we'll make an installation that shows exactly that here in Guadalajara in the museum, is that there was a very, very significant survey done last year with 10,000 participants, which is unusual because in science, you normally have 1,500, so it's a very expensive survey to do 10,000 people around the world. These were all between 15 and 25-year-olds. And 54% of them, more than half, thought that humanity will end during their lifetime.
No, seriously.
So these people sit in their bedrooms depressed and anxious and don't do anything about global warming. They don't do anything. They don't really push anything forward about the big problems. And I know it from myself. I'm so much more useful when I'm in good shape.
Is it?
And I'm not useful at all when I'm depressed. Because anxiety and depression are not empowering. They're debilitating. And so this situation where basically all the news, from the traditional news sources, but also on social media are negative, creates this atmosphere that everything is terrible. Which has consequences. I would say one of the consequences is that the extremes on both sides are empowered by that. I think that even Make America Great Again only works if a majority of people think that everything is terrible. If I ask Republicans, when was it great? Like, what was that time that you're talking about? 10 years ago couldn't have been because Obama was in charge. Was it 20 years ago? Well, 9/11 and the beginning of the Iraq and the Afghanistan war. 50 years ago, Ronald Reagan ran with the exact same line.
No.
Yes, Trump took that line from Ronald Reagan from 50 years ago. So ultimately, America was never great in the same way that the world was never great. We actually live for almost any situation, for almost any human development. It is now better than it used to be.
Wow.
But that's so unbelievably easy to forget. It's, one of the most impressive things, and this is data from a Nobel Prize winner, is that in 1700 in France, the average person's calorie intake was lower than it is today in the Republic of Congo, which is among the most malnourished countries on earth.
Wow.
So it's just it's also, I think, some of it is at fault the way we learn history, because we learn history about the absolute 0.01% elite. Yes, the French king had a lot to eat and he did very, very well. But 90% of France at that time lived in extreme poverty. And the same was true for most of Europe. England did a little bit better. But for most of Europe, 90%, not most people, 90% lived in extreme poverty. And so most of us would rather be alive than dead, and we would rather live in a democracy than in a dictatorship, and we would rather be healthy than sick, and we would rather be at peace than at war. And we would rather be educated than stupid. And these things can be measured. Like there is very proper, solid, scientific measurement about these things, and all of these things have improved.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to move over to, as we're on this topic, one other sort of interesting, controversial area. You worked on a project called Move Our Money, and this campaign hit some success around 2010. And what it did was it reduced unnecessary weapons programs and Pentagon waste by 15% in order to reallocate these funds to health and educational programs. But in 2016, Trump reversed this. Is this project something you would consider rebuilding in the future, or what happened to it?
I mean, it was a program started by Ben Cohen from Ben & Jerry's ice cream fame. He put 200 CEOs of large companies together, then would support this, that could say, yes, we can actually cut 15% of the Pentagon budget without changing the power of our military at all, and move it to healthcare and education. And under Obama, this became successful. Probably the only NGO project that I've ever been involved in where we could say, okay, we achieved the goal, let's cut the whole thing down. Obviously, we did not achieve that goal long term. And yes, absolutely. I'm meaning that and I don't think that this program or a campaign like this has any chance under the current administration. If I looked at the so-called big, beautiful bill, it pretty much is the exact opposite of how I would allocate money. But, that's where we are right now. But, from my own point of view, he has another 3 years, and then it's going to be different.
Yes.
We'll see something different. And, the idea that the United States right now is spending more on their defense than all adversaries combined seems a very strange allocation of money. Very strange. And I think that we all see it. Look, in New York City, I pay exactly the same amount of taxes, percentage-wise, than my brother does in Austria. They're exactly the same.
Wow.
But the difference is my brother has fantastic health care. His kids not only go to very good schools for free, but they go all the way to university for free.
Wow.
All the infrastructure is in pretty damn good shape. The streets, there's no potholes and all of that stuff. And I pay the same amount of money to my government in New York, but get none of that.
Wow.
And I think one of the culprits there, with that, it's not just one. I mean, there's a good number of reasons, like with all things big. But one of the culprits there, of course, is that the incredible military spending or the incredible Pentagon spending. Yep.
Makes sense. So if you were to take this idea of looking at things over a long chunk of time, over the past 20 years of your own career, do you feel like what you've done in the past is basically informing what you're doing right now And how do you feel about your future and what you're going to be doing, say, in the next 5 years?
Mhm. Yes, of course. I mean, but I'm not unusual there. I think that for most designers, what they did in the past informs what they're doing right now. So I think that that's a logical way of being a designer or being human. That's, yeah, I don't think I'm unusual there at all. I think because I've been doing a sabbatical every 7 years, these have been fantastic times to recalibrate the direction of the studio. That, when it's very busy and it's very difficult for me, but I think for many people, to really change directions. Meaning there is a possibility that if I would have never done a sabbatical, I would still be doing album covers and wonder why business is so terrible. There's a possibility. I think that the studio is so clearly separated by these sabbaticals that we had an exhibition in New York last year, and that was the ordering principle of the exhibition, meaning the first 7 years, the second 7 years, the third 7 years, and the fourth 7 years, because you could really tell that these were kind of different studios.
Interesting.
And so, but ultimately, I would say probably the biggest advantage of the sabbaticals is that it allowed me to see design still as a calling, rather than it's deteriorating into a career or even as a job. Many of my students, when I get them, see design as a calling, and once they're out of the university for a number of years and I meet them on the street and we talk, I have the feeling that they're now doing a job. Which is, they're happy when it's 5 o'clock in the evening or 6, or when the weekend comes around, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think that I can still see it that way. But particularly, I think it made sure that I can do the things that I feel are correct for where I am in my life. And I specifically with this project, the new exhibition is called Finally Something Good, in direction. And I feel that that's what I'm supposed to do right now. Like I've learned the language of design, and I think after the first sabbatical, it became clear to me that I should use this language of design for something else rather than promoting and selling. Not that I hate promoting and selling, I think it's totally fine, but it is odd that we as designers, or specifically as, let's say, communication designers, we go to school for it, we study it, we learn it, and then we only speak commercially in it. Meaning I'm learning Spanish right now. It wouldn't occur to me to learn Spanish and only speak commercial messages in Spanish. It would be idiotic. But because that's where the money is, I would say by far the vast majority of design studios only speak commercially, and it's a powerful language. And you can speak in any direction. You can speak personally, you can speak politically, you can speak what you think about the world. In any direction. It's a very specific language, as this combination between visuals that can be photographed or illustrated or sculptured, and words. It's a very specific language that in its specificity is very powerful. And so we still get requests for commercial jobs, and I always, give them to designers I've worked with in the past or studios that I'm close to. It's I just think it's more interesting for me, but also more meaningful to use this language that I've really learned and that many, many, many clients in the past relied on me or the studio to guide them to make that message powerful, whatever that was. And so now it's more meaningful to talk that language into a subject that I find important.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So now that you're showing so much in museums and galleries, do you still consider yourself a designer in a gallery, or do you feel like you're on the edge between design and art? I know they communicate differently, but the vehicle you're using, the museums, seems more artistic.
Well, when I look at other people's work, I don't give a shit. I mean, I don't care if it's done by a designer or an artist. Is it good or is it not good? Does it touch me or it doesn't? As a designer myself, when I'm a doer, I kind of have to care because I'm asked, just like you would. And in general, I think everything that we do at the studio is design, because ultimately we want to communicate. This is also the background that I'm coming from. But there is the best explanation that I've ever heard comes from a German philosopher, and I'm normally not in the habit of quoting Adorno, which is the philosopher. And he basically says there is no such thing as 100% functionality, because even the most functional cog is somehow informed by ideas like transparency that come out of the art world. And there is no such thing as 100% non-functionality, because even the most artistic piece of art, where the artist didn't give a shit at all about if anybody sees it or so, will have some kind of functionality, possibly just because I stand in front of it and make a selfie and use it as a background for myself and give it functionality. So what Adorno says, there is only a span between, let's say, 1% functionality and 99% functionality. Or you could express it differently, between 99% artistic endeavor and 1% artistic endeavor. But there is no 0 and no 100. And everything there is somewhere in between. Now, of course, my work now on that scale is probably closer to the art world than it is to the design world. But even when we did design, album covers are already much more artistic than, I don't know, the design of text forms. And I chose to design album covers and not text forms, even though I actually think the design of text forms would be super important, and it would be fantastic if the text form would be designed by a very good designer. So,
agreed.
Yeah. But in general, we tend to celebrate people who make pieces with little functionality over people who make pieces with a lot of functionality. And I can explain that to you. Let's say in architecture, we celebrate the person who designs a cathedral over the person who designs a factory. The factory is much more functional than the cathedral. The cathedral basically has no toilets, no kitchen, no sleeping quarters. It's a space that's not very functional. But we love it much more than the factory that has all that, but is not very beautiful. And the same is true for product design. we celebrate the designer of the Ferrari much more than the designer of the cement truck. Even though the cement truck is much more functional. And in graphic design, it would be the same. Many of us know the designer who designed the magazine page in all Dingbats that was completely unreadable. We know who that is. We don't know who designed the text form, even though arguably the text form is a much more important piece of design than a music magazine.
Interesting. Do you think that's because beauty, again, comes into play?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's being joy and that artistic element, the decision to create an article in a music magazine that's completely unreadable in Dingbats is an artistic decision.
Yes.
That a lot of the design community admired.
Yes.
Sadly, I think if the text form would be designed beautifully and gorgeously and would be a symbol or could be used as a guidepost for other text forms to emulate, that designer could possibly also create some admiration. But as it is, of course, meaning I don't know who designed the US text forms, and it probably was a bureaucrat. Yeah.
I agree. We are just about at the question portion of this interview. If you have questions for Sagmeister, feel free to drop them in the chat. You are also welcome to turn your camera on and raise your hand if you would like to speak to him directly. I have one last question for you before I'll jump into the chat here. My final question is, what are you reading?
I can tell you right now, I'm in a mix. I am reading a book, A Social History of Elizabethan England. There is, sadly, there is very little really great or very few great social histories out there that are not about the queen or the king or the noble, but that are about the people. The one that I'm reading is about the people, and it is very interesting. You know, I give you a little tidbit from it. Let's say, even though Elizabeth was known as a very enlightened queen, you were, of course, not allowed to say anything against her. If you did, if you wrote anything against her, not only was your hand hacked off, that's a pretty good copyright direction. Also, the person who published your writing, his hand was also hacked off.
What?
Yes. So basically, I mean, you know, we are talking, this is 15-something, so we are talking Middle Ages. Yeah, no, this was the idea of if you said anything against the dear leader.
Wow.
And many other interesting tidbits in there. Yeah, that's that's the book that's right now next to my sofa here.
Wow. All right. We've got some questions coming in here. Devon says, I would love to know, outside of your work, what are the small everyday things that reliably bring you joy or beauty, the things that remind you why this philosophy matters? And your career has included books, exhibitions, film, and teaching. Which of these mediums do you feel has been the most powerful in shaping how people actually live with your ideas?
Sure. Excellent. So I would say from the everyday joy, meaning here, of course, I would say is the view of the garden. Like I'm working all day, but it's so lovely to look out there, and there is gigantic pots of water that attract a lot of birds. I am not a bird watcher, but if I would be, I would get a pretty significant list together just basically by working here, because it's amazing the number and amount of birds that are coming by. And I would say here in Guadalajara, one of the joys is going for dinner every night. Neither me nor my partner are cooking. So we basically go out every single evening. Sometimes it's just the two of us. Many times we meet other people. It's very easy to meet people here. And that's always joyful. And I think that right after this, I probably check one or two things and then we go out for early dinners. So I probably not probably, I know we have a 5:30 dinner set up, which we sometimes have difficulties booking it that early because a lot of the restaurants only open at 7 or 7:30. But here lunch goes so late that we often book in lunch places. They close after us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. Go ahead.
There was a second
Oh, yeah.
part to that. No?
Second part is your career has included books, exhibition, film, and teaching. Which of these mediums do you feel has been the most powerful in shaping how people actually live with your ideas?
Strangely, I think the exhibitions, but specifically the large exhibitions, because we did some, I'm not talking about some graphic design exhibition at some gallery, that has, 1,000 people. But we did some very large exhibitions that had hundreds of thousands of people.
Wow.
And those large exhibitions then also generate an incredible amount of press. Like I remember with an exhibition in Vienna, and which that museum had a fantastic woman that did press. And she sent me a press guide afterwards that was it was like 2 phone books.
Wow.
Copies of articles that appeared about that exhibition. So I felt that it was a very great medium to communicate, which I didn't feel before. Like we've done some designy exhibitions where I felt, okay, 300 people show up at the opening, and then for the rest of the 6 weeks, the exhibition is up, the museum is empty, and I thought, I can do this kind of thing with a talk that's much less expensive and much less work to do than to put an exhibition together with all the expenses that are associated with it, the shipping, the creation, the blah, 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 blah. So from that point, that's also why I feel this combination now of doing physical things is a valid way to communicate, because not only can we show them and we can get people into the museum or the gallery, but also they are bought and live on, and they're expensive. So I can count that these things will live on for decades, possibly centuries. So, which is, not the case. I, of course, had long dreams about album covers that they also have some longevity.
Yes.
Which turned out to be wrong. Like basically once they were transformed into files, most people got rid of the album covers. And so a medium that I felt was elevated for me by being something that you didn't throw away, one of the few packages you didn't throw away, ultimately got thrown out anyway. Many cases.
Yeah. All right. We've got another question here from Chris Martin, and he's asking, why do you think people care more about corporate logo rebrands rather than injustices, local or global?
Well, I don't think that they care more about that. I think that within the design community, that might be the case. And you have a couple of, I don't know, sort of rebrands gone bad that, create sort of like a desire to dump on it by a lot of people. And we've definitely had a couple of those in the last couple of years, I would say. Some that were so significant that it questioned the the longevity of the company. Like a British car company comes to mind.
Yes.
And I think that specifically, I don't think that no, let me start again. I think it's in that same vein. I think the only rebrands that really get a lot of attention are the catastrophic ones.
No.
Very rarely the fantastic ones, and we've had those as well, get a lot of attention simply because we love stories about catastrophes. Be it scandals, be they scandalous, or be they natural catastrophes, or be they planes going down, or rebrands going bad. But I think in general, most of the attention would still be elsewhere. I never really participated in taking down a rebrand because I found that this whole world is very difficult to judge if you haven't been in the room. Most people, when they, rant against the rebrand on Instagram or wherever they do it, don't know the brief, don't know what the goal was, don't know what really happened. And yes, of course, you can have an opinion as a designer. You're absolutely 100% entitled to it. We actually, specifically with Jessica within Sagmeister and Walsh, it's quite a lot of brands, and quite some original ones, some rebrands. I think we actually got away very, very easily. Meaning, I don't think we had a single catastrophe, and I don't think we had a single shitstorm either, not one. But I have friends, of course, who that happened to, and from there I see that those shitstorms are not always granted. There are some, I think, that really were ill-inspired. Yeah. But ill-directed. Yeah.
Yeah. I get it. We've got one more from Ryan Brandel, who says, in response to AI and on the topic of challenging our assumptions about decline in creativity, as the world becomes dependent on AI, are you concerned about the potential stagnation of human creativity? And will design in general fall victim to good enough solutions as a side effect to the masses using AI?
I actually don't think so. It's AI, the question in general is a difficult one because people I normally trust are very divided about it. People who know more about the development and the future of AI see it quite differently from each other, which is new. I haven't quite seen that with other big technology development, meaning that didn't, I'm old enough to have witnessed the desktop revolution, and this was not the case then. That you had half of the experts say, oh my God, this is evil, and the other half saying, no, this is fantastic. In general, though, because I spent so much time over the last years looking at human development, and with that, of course, also how technology developed. I think that in the past, we've always used new technology for good and bad, but more for good and less for bad. My usual example is with the invention of the hammer, more of us built the house than killed the neighbor. And I think it's going to be the same with AI. We're going to have a lot of problems because people, of course, will use it and have already used it for bad. But I ultimately believe that we are more better than we are worse. And we will use it more for fantastic development. That, of course, will get less attention than the people that use it terribly, which is always juicier, which is why we hear so much about deepfakes and relatively little about the unbelievable developments of decoding molecules and the revolutions that are happening in a number of scientific directions, which is just juicier, which is just more interesting. And so I ultimately believe, and I don't for a second, I think that second part of the question, I don't for a second believe that it will diminish human creativity, because I actually think that it will spur us on. There will be things that we don't really want to have done by AI. You'll see this already with the backlash against streaming platforms that put some AI songs in there. I think there are certain things that we don't want a machine to do for us. This bathrobe thing that's really a shirt is hand embroidered. And I was willingly paying a significant extra amount for it, because it's very clear to me that somebody spent hours to do this by hand. Now, this shirt would also be possible, this embroidery you could actually do with a machine, but it would look slightly different. And I paid extra for it because I wanted it to be crafty. And I think that similar things, and meaning, look at the development in Brooklyn. You have a very significant part of the population of, definitely of northern Brooklyn, being involved in digital jobs. And nowhere else, probably in the United States, you see so much craft. People making jams and marmalades, putting pickles into things, all handmade things. I mean, my partner, she used to be a designer of interfaces for virtual reality and is now making chandeliers out of porcelain.
Wow.
Because of that desire of making something. And I think that I used to believe that this haptic desire had something to do with my age. And I don't believe that anymore, because I see so many young people being completely fascinated by it. I think that it's ultimately human. That there is that the digital world can answer many things fantastically, but not all. And that we have a desire for human interaction. And we have a desire, look, so far still, most universities went back to in-person after they were completely digital. And I see this with conferences. Of course, some things will remain digital. I don't have to necessarily fly to Tokyo anymore to judge a design competition. I can do this online. And that is a good thing. But many of the other conferences we still want to be in person. And I believe that is going to be the case with many objects, that we want something haptic that, of course, eventually, in another 10 years, 20 years, probably might be made by a robot. Who knows? But for example, in my case, since I buy 18th century art or 17th or 19th century art, that's not going to be replaced by, well, it's possible that the robot would paint that, probably do a good job, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be 200 years old. It won't have that history. It won't have that patina. It's not going to be that thing. And I believe that will remain to be part of us being human, that we would like that sort of thing that is not made by the machine. And I might be wrong. That's also possible. Yeah, my crystal ball in the past has not been the most clear.
Gee. Yeah, I think we all are like that. Any other questions here? We are 10 minutes over time. Just want to make sure I've covered everything.
I think
we've got it.
you go.
All right. Let me just say, well, thank you so much, Stefan. This is just a huge honor. I am so glad I finally got to speak with you. And thank you for everybody who showed up today with your wonderful questions. Have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful dinner for you, Stefan. And I hope to see you guys again on the Developing Life.
It's been a real pleasure. Very good way to spend an afternoon in Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.